can't get a presentation to work. So I have to admit, I'm very scared. I'm scared because we can't get the basic technology to work. I'm scared because I'm talking in front of an audience full of people who speak Spanish, and here I am speaking this very ugly language. And I'm scared because I don't want to put my money in the banks. I don't trust that my money is going to stay there or that they're going to let me have it back. And I'm scared because I don't trust the money. I don't trust that its value isn't going to depreciate, that it's not going to be inflated away. And I don't trust either of them because I don't trust the government. The organization that is supposed to set the rules that we are all supposed to live by can at any time and does change those rules on me and on you. And so, yes, I have been scared. And so I found something which thought could be salvation. I turned to Bitcoin. And, this is a system which I can voluntarily opt into, a set of rules which I can choose, and also which I know will remain the same forever and won't be changed on me or on you. But the problem is that I've been in Bitcoin for a long time now, and Bitcoin's been around for 15 years now. And I think that what we're experiencing is that we keep on finding ourselves, even with Bitcoin, back in the hands of middlemen that we are dependent on and who can change the rules on us anytime. With something as simple as exchange, or if we want to borrow or lend or earn yield on our Bitcoin, directly or indirectly, we find ourselves dependent on these middlemen who can change the rules on us. And now we find ourselves once again in the hands of Larry Fink of BlackRock, right? The same kind of technology that we couldn't get to work here a moment ago. And I think that the reason we have this problem is because, in part, of how we have been conceptualizing Bitcoin. We think of Bitcoin as a token, as this currency, as this little thing that we can move back and forth. But Bitcoin in practice is much more than that, and more deeply than that. Bitcoin is a set of rules that cannot be changed, that we can choose voluntarily and we don't depend on a middleman for. Bitcoin consensus is the primary product of Bitcoin, and it provides us with secure rules. And those secure rules are what allows us to have hard money, which is BTC. So BTC, which is that coin symbol that all of the newspapers will show when they think about Bitcoin, is just the second product of Bitcoin. And we require both of them, secure rules and hard money for Bitcoin. Now, the question that I've been asking myself for a long time, and not just me, is what if? What if instead of having to give up our control and hand over our Bitcoin to others who we would be dependent on, what if we could have the rules of the exchange secured by Bitcoin itself? What if other important services, maybe all important services to us, were something that we could choose to opt into with secure rules? What if we weren't dependent on other people? In that case, we wouldn't be giving up control, we would be in control. And to my mind, the primary challenge that we have with Bitcoin is the question of how we can expand our sphere of self-sovereignty, how we can expand the things that we can do without middlemen, how we can expand what we do with Bitcoin. And this is an abstract idea, so I want to give two concrete examples. One of those examples we already spoke about, and it's exchange. It's probably the first service most people will ever use with Bitcoin. Right now, if you hold Bitcoin in your wallet, it is under your direct control, it is true Bitcoin, and you're not dependent on anyone. But if you want to go to an exchange, that Bitcoin isn't going to stay in your wallet. It's going to be transferred into a different system. And that system has a lot of rules. In fact, every single service, every single institution is a set of rules. In this particular case, the rules are who can deposit, how much can they deposit, do they need to go through KYC, how does the order book work, how are trade executions managed, and who can withdraw. Those are all rules. Now, if we could take the rules of this exchange and move them into the sphere of Bitcoin, then the entire thing would be secured by rules that we don't have to trust someone else about. Now, that's a pretty simple example, so I'd like to give a maybe more exciting example. A lot of the time we talk about building a circular Bitcoin economy, a truly native Bitcoin economy. And the basis of any economy is business. Now, today, if you want to start a business, you find yourself dependent on a lot of different people, a lot of different middlemen. You have to go and set up a company, which is dependent on the company's house in your country. You have to set up contracts and partnerships, and that's dependent on lawyers and on courts. You have to go and ask a bank to give you an account. If you want to pay people, if you want to pay employees, there are employment laws and huge stacks of laws that you are dependent on third parties for. Now, what if we could take this idea of a business and put it into this idea of where you're self-sovereign, where you have control, into your wallet? I'm lucky enough to have experienced something like this. I've been working as part of a project called Sovereign. And Sovereign is a system which allows people, users, to trade, to lend, to borrow, to stake their Bitcoin, and even create Bitcoin-backed stablecoins without any dependence on a middleman, without having to rely on anyone who could change the rules on them. And that's great for the user. But here I want to talk about it from the perspective of me, the person who's working as part of Sovereign. Usually, when I'm working with some organization, with some institution, I would want to have a contract, but I don't. Instead, everything that I have to invest in terms of time and contribution and everything that I'm supposed to get out, that's all secured by a smart contract. The payments are all done in BTC and secured by a smart contract. The way that the decisions can get made are all organized by a set of smart contracts. There are no third parties with whom I am dependent when I am part of Sovereign. And as a result, Sovereign is an exciting window into something that could be our future. A world in which what we can do within our wallet without having to leave the realms of the wallet expands. A world in which we can expand the area, the sphere in which we are sovereign. So I think it's time for us to change not just how we think about Bitcoin, but also how we use our BTC and how we use the Bitcoin system. And now is a very exciting time. I think the most exciting time in Bitcoin since its very, very early days, because what I am discussing now, what I'm going to try and present is how we can create this world in Bitcoin over the next year or two. And how we can do this, and this is the most important part, without any changes to Bitcoin Core. Because the whole point of Bitcoin Core is a set of rules that nobody can change on us. So the question is how? How can we do this? And the answer is that there's a new set of cryptographic technologies that have been developed and are becoming available to Bitcoin now. And I'm going to go into them in a moment, but first let's examine some of the things that we've tried in the past, because a lot of people have dreamt of being able to do this for a long time. Now, there are 3 different ways that people have tried to accomplish this. One is side chains, things like stacks or rootstock or liquid. Another, which requires changes to Bitcoin and therefore has never been possible, is drive chains. And the third are client-side verified protocols, things like ordinals, BRC20, taproot assets. Now, all 3 of these have one central problem. They cannot trustlessly provide new rules for BTC. You can't use your BTC trustlessly with them. But they also have other challenges as well. In terms of consensus, using Bitcoin consensus as their security systems, side chains and drive chains don't directly do that. CSV, on the other hand, actually, because the transactions occur on Bitcoin main chain, are as secure as any Bitcoin transaction. but they suffer in two other ways. First of all, because they're occurring on Bitcoin main chain, they're not very scalable. And second, because they're occurring on Bitcoin main chain, they can only use the rule sets which are currently available to us on Bitcoin main chain. They're very limited. And so the idea I'm presenting today is that we can escape this with a new concept that is coming to Bitcoin. And I'm going to refer to this concept today as Bitcoin OS, a system which allows us to use Bitcoin as an operating system where BTC can be used trustlessly with any set of rules secured by Bitcoin consensus and in a system which is interoperable and Turing complete. And the way that we're able to create this now is because of new cryptographic techniques which collectively are called rollups. And rollups are not a fantasy anymore. There are working prototypes of rollups on Bitcoin today. So what is a rollup? A rollup is a system which allows for transactions to occur off of main chain, so off-chain transactions, to be bundled together or rolled up, turned into a validity proof, and that proof is used as a Bitcoin transaction on Bitcoin main chain. In other words, all of those bundled up, rolled up transactions become a single transaction on Bitcoin. And as a result, they get the security of Bitcoin. But there are three interesting properties here. The first is that because the transactions are occurring off-chain, they can use any set of rules that a developer wants to use permissionlessly. That means you can use any VM, any execution environment. It means you can use any programming language. The second is that because these transactions are happening off-chain, they have effectively, at least on a theoretical basis, infinite scalability, both from a throughput perspective and a speed perspective. And the third thing is that every single transaction, because it ultimately becomes a Bitcoin transaction, pays for, in BTC, its security, gets the equivalent of a Bitcoin level security, and because it's paying the miners, is also enhancing Bitcoin's security budget and increasing Bitcoin's overall security. So those are three extremely interesting properties. And what they allow us to do is to create a system over the coming years, which I'm calling Bitcoin OS. And the reason I'm calling it Bitcoin OS is because with these technologies, we can create a system which allows us to rewrite how we create services, rules, perhaps even governments, in terms of the fact that we can create them with rules, any rules we want, that we can opt into and no one can change on us. So I'd like to talk about the modules. Have I lost you guys? I'd like to talk about the modules, because it used to be the case that we thought that anything that happened in a Bitcoin had to happen in the main chain. But over the years, we've come to understand that you can modularize things. So the first module of Bitcoin OS is what I'm referring to as the shell. In the shell, we have the different rollups. And these different rollups can be any execution environment, right? So we could have the EVM from Ethereum and allow us to do anything we want to do in Ethereum, or anything that you do in Solana. You could use the programming language of Rust, and you could use the virtual machine of Solana. Or you could have specific things, new things, things designed specifically for privacy, or optimized for gaming, or optimized for exchange, or optimized for very, very cheap, low-cost stablecoin transactions. What's important is that all of these different systems would be trustlessly interoperable. And that's different from what we currently see in the crypto space. In the crypto space, we currently see a large number of what are called layer ones that are not interoperable, and each one has a different, totally different security system. That means that you're dependent in two ways. First of all, you're dependent on their security system, but also, if you want to move funds or data between them, you're dependent on bridges, and we all know how risky those bridges are. Whereas what we're talking about here with Bitcoin OS is a single, cohesive, unified system with no trusted dependencies in between. And what allows that to happen is the next module, which I'm going to call the magma layer, the layer which allows us to have the value and the energy of Bitcoin consensus and BTC flow throughout the system. The way the magma system works can be explained in this way. Here you can see a large number of transactions which are created by apps and users in each of these different rollups. These transactions get rolled up by the rollup, and then all of these rollups together are sending their transaction bundles into this layer, which we're calling the magma layer, where they become a validity proof. And then this validity proof gets pushed into a Bitcoin block. Once it gets pushed into a Bitcoin block, two things happen. First of all, we've managed to bundle all of this. And second, we now have the security for all of these transactions of a Bitcoin block. So that allows us also to have the other interesting aspect that I was talking about, which is each of these rollups with all of their different transactions, each of them has a smart contract on the magma layer. These smart contracts, because they're on a single system, are able to trustlessly interact with each other. And what that means is that if you're a user over here on a privacy-focused rollup, you can transact with one of these, let's say this rollup, which is optimized for high-speed exchange. You can do it seamlessly, maintain your privacy, but get the benefits of a optimized exchange rollup. Now, this is very similar to what we think about today in the way we develop software in what's known as polyglot architecture, right? You can write something in Rust, you can write something in C, you can write something in Node or whatever. They're all a part of the same system, and the user doesn't need or know what particular programming languages or execution environments were used in the creation of the system. This is a modular system which allows us to bring that concept to Bitcoin. We have one last piece that we need to put together, which is the ability for BTC to move seamlessly within the system, both between rollups and between Bitcoin Core and the shell. Because if you remember, in the systems that we've tried up until now, this was the challenge, right? All of them had advantages and disadvantages, but all of them failed on the ability to trustlessly use Bitcoin. And that is because we, up until now, have had to rely on something called pegging or bridging. Systems which have a system which requires an honest majority. An honest majority means that we need to be dependent that a majority of participants in the system are going to be honest at any given time. Now, obviously, it could happen that that majority has a desire or an incentive to censor or even steal from the minority. For us to move from a trusted system into a trustless system, we need to move to a singleton majority, so to an honest singleton system. A system where even one participant who remains honest can maintain the integrity of the entire system. Just one person. That could be me, it could be you. And the way you create a system like that is that you have to take advantage of an asymmetry. The asymmetry in power between a single participant and potentially any number of other participants. When you send a Bitcoin transaction, you're using exactly that kind of asymmetry, because you are the only person who can prove that you own the Bitcoin, regardless of how many other people there are out there. It is truth that provides that asymmetry, because cryptographic proofs are proof that something happened or didn't happen, regardless. It's not a vote anymore. With Bitcoin now, as an extension of rollup technology, we actually have two technologies which allow us to develop this kind of honest singleton system. The first is BitVM. And what BitVM allows us to do is for a single participant to prove a fraud. And if they're able to prove that a transaction was fraudulent, they can make sure that it does not execute. A second type of cryptography that is being developed is witness encryption. And in witness encryption, a single honest participant can force the inclusion of a correct transaction. Now, with either of these techniques, we are able to create trustless BTC channels for rollups and as a result for an entire Bitcoin OS system. But we're probably going to get both of them. And that means that all of these things are now possible practically and as an engineering challenge for Bitcoin without any changes to Bitcoin Core. So we're now able to expand what we're able to do with Bitcoin Consensus and BTC and expand the number of things that we're building on Bitcoin, which means that we now have an opportunity to create a world of unchanging rules. A world where services as simple as exchange, as complicated as a business, where new services in metaverses or games, or potentially even new ways of envisioning how we do government are possible. A world, an entire world built on Bitcoin. And so that is why I think that right now we're in the most exciting period for Bitcoin maybe ever. And it's why I think that this, building a world on Bitcoin, is the challenge and the rallying cry that we all need to get to be focused on right now. And it's also why I think that there's never been a better time to be in Bitcoin. So, thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'd love to take them. And beyond that, I wish that we all have the opportunity in the future to be ever more sovereign.
Why do you say drive chains don't inherit Bitcoin security?
So the question was, why do I say drive chains do not inherit Bitcoin security? And the reason is twofold. First of all, with drive chains, you're actually not using Bitcoin Consensus. What you're using is Bitcoin merge mining. So when you're merge mining with something, the miners have two different economic incentives. One for the chain, which is main chain, and one for the mined chain. They can, for example, attack the merge mine chain without attacking the main chain. And so it may be very cheap for them to attack the main chain, the side chain, and they won't see any, it won't cause them any conflict on main chain. The second reason is because there's no guarantee that you get 100% of the miners mining the side chain. And in fact, we've never seen a side chain, despite more than 10 years of side chain history, which has had 100% of miners. So even if their security was similar, which it isn't, the proof of work devoted to it would not be the same.
Hey, Yago. How far you think we are from having a practical implementation of one of those, BitVM or the other one that you mentioned? Because they are very exciting times, as you said. But I'm curious on what's your view on timeline. So we have long time preference, so no problem.
That's fine. Yeah. So
have
first,
an idea.
I agree that we have to have long time preference. That said, with Rollups, we've already seen working Rollups for Bitcoin. They're not practical yet in terms of you wouldn't want to use them for production. But they're more than just theoretical. We know they work, and now they're being optimized. I think we're going to see rapid progress in them over the next year, and possibly by the end of next year we will start to see the first practical implementations, maybe even before, which is a bit of a scary thought in terms of how quickly it could happen. With BitVM, things are happening even faster. So BitVM was suggested about a month ago. There's already a prototype version which has a VM able to perform cryptographic functions, which they announced 2 days ago, and the speed at which they're able to progress is incredibly rapid. So not only are we seeing more people devoted to this space, multiple different projects, and more rapid progress than before, we're also seeing the ability to take advantage of a lot of this work which has been done outside of Bitcoin and basically sort of leapfrog by bringing it into Bitcoin. I think I have time for maybe one more question if somebody would like to ask. If not, thank you very much. You guys can... Oh, is there?
Maybe I think... hello. Maybe I think in the future, my idea is, what about the security, talking about the quantum computing, and Are you preparing for that? Are you thinking in maybe in a quantum post algorithm or something? Today exists a post quantum algorithm.
Yeah, so the question was, is Bitcoin quantum secure? The cryptography used in Bitcoin is quantum hard, although obviously not 100% quantum secure. And so it's likely that the risk from quantum computing to Bitcoin is, at least in the foreseeable future, extremely minimal. However, something like what we were discussing, I think, is extremely important. Because today, let's say we discovered we were wrong and there is a problem with Bitcoin. We need to change it. Maybe it's quantum, maybe it's something else. It would require a hard fork. But in a system in which you can have other platforms built on Bitcoin, you also get an additional advantage. You get the ability to, instead of hard fork, create through one of these trustless channels an alternate system that people can seamlessly migrate to. And so you create the potential, if it arises, for the ability to upgrade Bitcoin without a hard fork and to do so in a voluntary fashion. And actually for the two systems to continue to work, and as one of them becomes less viable, to slowly die off rather than it happening in a dramatic fashion. And so I think even from a survivability perspective, not only in terms of increasing the security budget for Bitcoin, but also other more dramatic situations, having these kinds of technologies is a game changer for Bitcoin. Thank you very much, everyone. Please find us at Sovereign. I look forward to speaking to you.